does raptor programs. He has a screech owl that's 27 years old. That's the oldest one I've ever heard of. The oldest one we've ever had lived to be 18. But he's going for the record, I'm sure, at 27. And then the big barred owls can live longer. They can live into their 30s, maybe even 40s.
We had a question here. How can they look straight over their backs like that? How can they turn their heads around?
Well, they can do it really easily because how many neck bones do they have?
Anybody know?
0. You're saying they're a spineless cephalopod? No, they're not 0. They have 14 neck bones. Yeah. How many neck bones do you all have? More than 2. More than 1. More than 5. 7. Yeah. So 7 for you, 14 for the owl. Gives them that extra ability to move their head. But look what this owl cannot do. This owl cannot move its eyes. Can't roll its eyes. You know how if you tell your brother or sister a bad joke, they roll their eyes? Owls can't do that. So owls are the ideal creatures to tell bad jokes to. Yeah. So their eyes are so big that they can't move them in the sockets. They have a bony ring around them. And to compensate, they've adapted to turn their heads really far. Now the books will say they can turn their head 270 degrees in each direction. I don't really believe that. I've never seen an owl turn its head that far. I think to get that number, a scientist a long time ago went into a museum and took a stuffed specimen and grabbed the head and said, oh, look at that, I can turn 3/4 of a circle in each direction. But in life, the farthest I've ever seen an owl turn its head is about 220 degrees. So a little over straight behind its back. So if you add 220 plus 220, they can do about 440 total movement.
We had a question. Do they carry rabies?
No bird can carry rabies. Yeah, only mammals carry rabies. So say an owl eats a bat with rabies, okay? That rabies virus would not live in the owl. It would die. The rabies virus would become ineffective. It would no longer be effective against people.
Okay,
Yeah.
Question here. Have our barred owls had babies? They have not. We think that they can't quite get things lined up.
Yeah, the wing injuries probably prevent things from going on. We'll leave it at that.
On top of the fact that we do not have a breeder's license, and that's a whole different ball game. Plus, barred owls are not endangered.
Yeah.
So breeding birds in captivity is a whole other thing.
Question here.
How much bones do they have?
How many bones do they have? You know, I have searched for that online and I can't seem to find a reliable number, so I don't really know how many bones they have. It's a good question. Some summer when I have an extra time, I'm going to sit there and look at a skeleton of an owl and count how many bones they have. But yeah, I don't know exactly how many bones.
And Mark had to research that for a book that he's written.
On owls.
On owls of all things.
Yep.
And it's for kids.
The other question is how many feathers do they have? Don't know that either. There's thousands on this bird. So any of you kids next summer, if you have nothing to do, you can come over to the house and sit there for 3 months and count feathers on an owl. I bet you there's at least 20,000 feathers on that bird. Yeah. Question over here.
After I can pass around the pellets.
We're not going to actually pass them around, but you can look at them afterwards.
Look, but don't touch.
The reason we're not going to pass them around is they have bacteria on them. And like you would touch it, and then you'd pick up your hot dog and eat your hot dog. Where would the bacteria go? In your mouth, and then like an hour later, you'd be coughing up a pellet. Yeah, so we don't want anybody touching them. But the ones you take apart in school have been sterilized, but it's still a good idea to wash your hands. Yeah, after you touch them. Yes? How come the ones in school are a lot bigger than these? That's a great question. The pellets that you take apart in school are from wild owls. Wild owls eat more than our birds in captivity because they're working harder, they're out in the cold, they're burning off calories, so they need to eat more. So there's more bones in their pellet, and the pellet's bigger.
We've got a nice one for you, Mark. It's still wet.
Oh, yeah. And you thought mucus was just for colds.
Yeah.
It's covered with mucus.
It helps it come up the throat.
Yeah.
But watch what this barn owl is going to do. Look what she's doing. Yeah. She's rocking out. Let's greet her. Barn owls rock their heads back and forth. All owls can do it, but barn owls do it a lot. And barn owls don't hoot, they hiss. They go shh. Try that.
The other noise that they make, which we won't imitate, is a scream or a screech. So imagine in your head, without imitating it, rubber tires screeching on pavement.
There's a lot of whitewash.
That sounds like barn owls, screeching rubber tires. Now here in New Hampshire, very few records of barn owls nesting. But guess what? One of the most recent records from the 70s was just up the road in Hollis. There was a barn owl that nested in a barn not far from here in mid-70s. I don't know the exact year. It might have been 76 or 74, but it was in the mid-70s. And that's the last known record of a nesting barn owl in New Hampshire. So they're a rare bird here. It's just too cold for them in the winter. And we have them in Massachusetts down on Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard. But you remember 3 winters ago how hard a winter we had? It was super cold, deep snow in February, high wind. On the vineyard, they went into that winter with about 30 pairs on the island. By the end of the winter, they were down to 1 pair. All the others had passed away, perished in the tough weather. So I think they're rebuilding. I know of at least 1 barn on the vineyard where they're nesting. And they can have up to 3 families or clutches of eggs a year. And they can lay up to 10 or 12 eggs in each clutch. So theoretically, 1 female could produce 36 eggs in a season, in a breeding season. So they can reproduce and repopulate pretty quickly. But this bird came to us from a zoo, so she's captive hatched. Question there. Do any of the owls stay with their mates for life? Yes and no. It depends if you're a migratory owl or a permanent resident. So if you're a permanent resident owl, you have a long-term mate. If you're a migratory owl, you probably have a new mate every year. So that begs the question, and you don't have to answer this in public, which would you rather be, a migratory owl or a permanent resident owl? Think about it.
Now, if you travel to warmer places than New England, you're likely to run into barn owls. They're actually found around the world on 6 continents except for Antarctica. And so they're quite common in Florida and the southern states and other countries with warmer climates.
Anybody seen a barn owl in New England? No? Okay, I was out in California just over a year ago. I was out in Napa Valley, and no, I wasn't on a wine tour. I was looking for owls, and I was hanging out in the vineyards. A lot of the vineyard growers now use owls to control rodents. So instead of using pesticides, they use barn owl, put up barn owl boxes. So if you're drinking a nice organic Chardonnay or something, you have barn owls to thank. In fact, some of the wine growers now, they put barn owls on their labels. You may see some of the fancy wines that have barn owls right on the label. And that's a great thing. They're not using chemical poisons. They're using barn owls to eat gophers and mice, which can gnaw on the irrigation lines and gnaw on grapevine roots.
Yeah. So that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
Question here.
What if there's a migrant owl and a permanent owl?
What do you mean? What if they live together? Well, all like great horned owls are permanent residents. All saw-whet owls are migratory. So different kinds of owls do one or the other. They don't do both. You can't be in one place and migrate, right? It's kind of mutually exclusive. You got to either do one or the other. So you're either a permanent resident or you do migration. Yeah.
How big can they get?
That's full grown. Yep. Here's how it works. Owls are full grown when they're about 7 weeks old.
And that's true for all birds.
As soon as a bird can fly, that's the size it's going to be for the rest of its life. In fact, eagles, when they first fly, they are actually bigger at 8 weeks old than they will be when they're 5 years old. So they actually lose some size as they get older. But most birds, they're full grown at 7 weeks, 6 or 7 weeks old. Imagine if you were full grown at 6 or 7 weeks old. That'd be pretty weird, huh? Yeah. Okay.
Oh, okay.
She's going to swap out with the dog walker.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm going to walk the dog.
You're going to walk the dog, yeah. You're going to walk the dog with crutches?
She's going to walk me.
Oh, okay. Yeah. She just had knee surgery, so I think it's going well.
Yeah.
Anyway, any other questions? Yes. Which of the owls are migratory? Well, we have eruptive migrants, which are kind of irregular migrants, like snowy owl, hawk owl, snowy owl, hawk owl, boreal owl. Saw-whet owl is a regular migrant. It's our little tiny owl that comes through here in October and November. Short-eared owl is migratory. Permanent residents would be screech owl, great horned owl, barred owl, barn owl. I think we covered a lot of them in the east. Burrowing owl would be a residential in Florida. Yes?
Out of the birds around here that can fly, do they get a chance to hunt in like an enclosed environment, or can they?
Our birds, they have big cages, and they can fly, and occasionally chipmunks get into the cage, and they don't usually come out. Yeah, so if mice or frogs or chipmunks get into his cage, usually that's it, they don't come out.
Yeah, so no bare feet up here, okay?
And what kind of owl is this?
This is a great horned owl. And great horned owls are the tigers of the woods. They have tiger-like markings underneath the wings. And they have what we call horns, but are they bony horns? No. Are they ears? No. Point to us on your own heads and show us where the ear holes on birds are. Right. They're right on the sides of their heads. Now the great horned owl has a 4-note voice. So why don't we split you right down the middle. We'll have this side do the low call, which I'll do, and then you can do it. And over here you can do the high call. Okay, say you hear the low call. Over here. And then maybe back in the woods you might hear a higher one. Go ahead. And then maybe the lower one answers back. Go ahead. Yeah.
Nice job.
And so they're duetting. Great horned owls are permanent residents. They mate for life. This bird is 11 years old, and he could live into his 30s or 40s.
Marsha actually, Marsha was actually raised by owls, but the reason I bring that up is in her household, they had a great horned owl that lived to be 43 and a half. And I think the record is 51 years old at a zoo in San Francisco. So the bigger an owl, the longer they might live. The most dangerous time for an owl is its first year. So a lot of baby owls don't make it to year 1, but if you make it to year 1, usually your odds are pretty good beyond that to live a long life.
Because when you think about it, it takes time to develop a hunting skill. And, you know, some of them are better at it than others.
And to become a good flyer.
Yeah.
Question here.
How do you know if they're a boy or a girl?
Well, this owl, we base it on a couple things. With the big owls, the females weigh more than the males. And he fits into the male weight range. He weighs about 2.5 pounds. A big female could weigh as much as 5 pounds. So males are smaller, generally, and also he hoots like a male, and he kind of acts like a male. So there's different behaviors that we can key in on. But to be sure, we would have to do a blood test. Yeah. Just looking at him, you can't really tell. Most owls look the same. The owl that you can tell gender on is the barn owl that we just saw. And we should have mentioned it, but I forgot to. That was a female, and she has yellow or gold on the chest, which usually you don't see on the males so much. So it's a good way to tell them apart. So he can take down some big prey. This is the owl that can take down a skunk or an opossum. A friend of mine was photographing at an owl's nest, great horned owl's nest, outside of Boston in the Blue Hills, and he saw one of the adult owls fly in with a poodle. Still had the collar on. So watch out for your pets. Small cats and small dogs are definitely possible menu items for great horned owls.
On top of the
You're kind of in a
On top of the damage that cats do to wildlife.
Right. Yeah, cats eat a lot of birds in a year, so if you can keep your house cat in the house, you actually are going to do a lot of bird saving. You're going to keep a lot of birds from getting killed. But this great horned owl was in his nest in Milton, just outside of Boston in the Blue Hills, and when he was a baby, he fell out of his nest. And when he hit the ground, he broke his right wing. And normally that would be a fatal thing. That bird would have died. But luckily for him, a forest ranger found him and rescued him and brought him to the Blue Hills Trailside Museum. And they splinted the right wing, and it healed. So they said, oh, maybe we can release this bird. So they gave him a flight test, and he didn't fly well enough to be released. So he probably got like a B- on his flight test. He needed A+ to be released. So he can fly, but not perfectly. And you might also notice on his left eye, his upper eyelid is stuck in the up position. He can't blink his upper eyelid. We don't know what's going on. He's been to 3 different ophthalmologists, and they don't know either what's going on. We don't know if it's a neurological issue or what. So he cannot blink that eye. And you'll notice that some of the time his pupils are different sizes. So there's something going on with that left eye. We're not sure what. Yes? The horns? Well, the feathery tufts, which are called horns, are probably for mood expression, you know, in courtship, or when they're kind of hot, they'll lay them down. Also, they may be helpful in camouflage. So when they're sitting in a tree, they help break up the pattern, and they can sit in a pine tree and blend in pretty well with the bark. What do we have? Oh, an earthworm. Yeah. Yeah, looks like lunch. Yeah.
Lunch for a screech owl.
Yeah.
Do all owls have yellow eyes?
Do all owls have yellow eyes? Well, let me quiz you. You've seen 2 owls today that did not have yellow eyes. Do you remember which 2 did not? Do you remember who was in this box? Barn owl has dark eyes. Barred owl has dark eyes. So no, not all the owls have yellow eyes. And in fact, the last owl you're going to see does not have yellow eyes either. I'm not going to tell you. I'll ask you what color they are when she comes out. All right, any other questions? Yes? Feathers on their feet, but not on the bottoms. Don't they get bloody when they're eating? They'll bathe. You know, if they get kind of gunked up from eating, they will bathe.
Yeah, it's amazing how clean his feet are. We don't clean them.
Yeah, he keeps them clean.
He cleans them.
Yeah.
They all do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they will jump in their water dish, take a bath, and they'll sit in the rain, take a shower. But it's amazing how clean he stays. And it's the same with all the other owls. They don't get messy looking feet. They'll preen them too. They'll pick off chunks of meat and clean off their feet. So maintenance is an important part of an owl's routine.